That Bible guy patrons, this is my first video specifically to you. I just start by thanking you guys for signing up to this Patreon site and supporting me every month is just incredible. You are an answered prayer, and I can see God doing incredible things which happen to have come about during this pandemic. But again, thank you so much for all your support. And again, this is the first video where I've done this just for patrons because I want to give a little bit more to you guys in terms of the practicals that I'm particularly interested in terms of reaching out to seek and save the lost, to help as many people as possible, and to have them in conversations. So hopefully what these videos will do is call you and me higher in reaching out, as Jesus said, to seek and save the lost and to get into them conversations and be able to answer the questions, the objections, and also the reason for the hope that we have. So the last session was the cosmological argument. This is the practical session on that in dealing with the objections and the practical conversations that we can have on the back of the cosmological argument that we had in the last video. If you haven't watched that, you probably need to watch that first to understand what I'm talking about. But the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to break it into three groups of people. And they're going to be the hard skeptic, soft skeptic, and the seeker. So the hard skeptic is the person who just doesn't believe that God is behind the creation of the universe. There's some other reason for it. And they're not really interested in your viewpoint. They're not persuaded about it or by it. They may or may not have heard it before. Obviously, they've thought about it before, but they're just not moving. They're not really interested, and they just fervently disagree, and that's all there is to it. So that's the hard skeptic. We're going to get on the soft skeptic, which is the one I'm most interested in, the person who maybe doesn't believe what we do about the origin of the universe, but they're open to hearing about what you think, and maybe they're not fully persuaded one way or the other. Maybe they slant one way or another, but they're open to hearing what we have to say. The third person is the seeker. They're already seeking God. We'll not have too much to say about them. It's really the middle one, the first one, the second one particularly. The first one. So we meet a hard skeptic. I do want these videos to be conversational. I'm also planning to make them shorter, my videos in general. So I'd love to get your thoughts on what length you think would be good for YouTube videos in general. A lot of people throwing out to me even 5 to 10 minutes at the moment is maybe a good time period. But give me your thoughts on that. I'll ask you more about that again. But the hard skeptic then. So the person we meet who with the knowledge of the cosmological argument, whatever begins to exist requires a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe was caused. The best explanation for that universe is God. The hard skeptic doesn't agree, doesn't want to agree, doesn't like what we say, and he's very much against it. Now, first thing I would say here is if someone's not open, they don't really want to discuss it, then there might not be any need to pursue it. If they're mocking, then don't engage a mocker. No point in that. But if they just disagree, intellectually just disagree, but they're happy to talk about it, then we might deal with their objections. So they've already got a strong view. So they believe what they believe for a reason. So they've given thought to what they think about the universe and whether God's behind it or not. When we deal with their objections, just to fire this out, we may be dealing with their objections for our own sake, not theirs. In other words, they're not that open, and they're not going to change that much. It's good to engage conversation anyway if they're happy to talk, maybe. Don't throw pearls to pigs. Keep that in mind. But it may be for us. In other words, we hear what somebody says. They throw out an objection to something we believe is evidence for God. And if we can't answer it, we go away and it may create a doubt. Remember what I said? Deal with what you hear. So, hard skeptic says, here's the two most common objections I've heard to the cosmological argument. First one, whatever begins to exist requires a cause. How do you know that? How can you prove that? I don't believe that that's the case. You don't believe that everything that begins to exist requires a cause? I have heard this. I had a conversation with a physicist one time in a barbecue that the church had over in a good friend Mulligan and Joe's house, and he said that to me. I'll be honest, the first time I heard it, that everything that begins to exist requires a cause, and he said no, I'm like, I don't know what to say to him, because he's actually very qualified. And that's something else to watch out for. Don't allow somebody's qualifications or standing to dent your debate about truth. You're dealing with truth, not a personality, not a qualification-based conversation. So what would I say to that now? Well, in some ways, I feel it's quite simple to deal with. When we talk about the evidence, in this case scientific evidence for God or whatever it is, we're dealing with proven science. We're dealing with well-known proven science. Anybody could throw out a theory about anything. And there have been all kinds of theories to the origins of the universe. Have they been proven? Have they got any evidence to support them? Any well-known people who follow that evidence? Is there many of them? Again, there's people out there who believe it's a flat earth, but it's a very, 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 very small minority of people who are going against a massive amount of evidence. So is it proven science? So when somebody says that's not necessarily true, I'm like, why do you feel it's not necessarily true? What do you mean by that? Why do you feel that? What's your evidence for that? So we're dealing with the realm of proven science. Science that stands up to our experience. Who's ever heard of things popping into existence uncaused? Oh wait, there's a kangaroo. I don't mean to be mockery when I say this. Oh, look, there's a kangaroo outside my garden. It just popped into existence. Oh look, there's a giant beach ball in my garden. It just popped into existence. No one would accept that explanation. It's too magical. It's more outlandish than what you're saying my view of God is, to suggest that things just pop in. No one's ever heard of, no one's ever seen, no one's ever known of things just popping into existence uncaused. It simply doesn't happen, and it therefore doesn't happen with matter. Nothingness causes nothingness. It cannot come out of nothing. Things don't pop out of existence uncaused. So therefore, that's why I'd lead with it. We're dealing with proven science, things that are based on our experience, and who's ever heard of that ever happening in any world that we live in? As I say, people can throw out a theory about anything, but it has to be backed up by something. So that's what I say to that one. The second one, very common one you'll probably hear is, well, who created God then? Now, in dealing with this objection for the hard skeptic, the few things I can say. But first of all, I want to say you're thinking of the wrong God. You're assuming a self-contradiction. It's actually like asking who has made square circles before. The uncreated creator is a... So I'm reading this, sorry. Uncreated creator, you're assuming the uncreated creator is a created creature. That's a bit of a mouthful. The uncreated creator is a created creature. But here's the thing. You're assuming a limited God. When you say who created God, you're automatically assuming a God other than the God I meant. You're assuming a God of the world who's affected by time, space, and matter. The God that I'm talking about is outside of time, space, and matter because he created time, space, and matter. You're automatically assuming a God of this world. It's not a God of this world. It's a God who's outside the world. So your problem is you're assuming a wrong God. Our God of the Bible is not affected by time, space, and matter. He has created time, space, and matter. An example, again, if you've heard a great video, I can put a link up to watch if you want. It's one of the greatest answers to this I've ever heard. Was the computer. Who designed the person who designed my computer in front of me right now, or this phone? He's not running around inside the phone or running around inside the laptop. He created it and therefore sits outside of it. So when you say he created God, you're assuming the wrong God. Another little point on that, and my daughter really loved this explanation, is you simply cannot keep going back and back and back on what created the universe. Oh, something created the universe, but it needed create it. It needed create it. It needed create it. You cannot have what's called an infinite regression of causes. They cannot go on infinitely. At some point, something came into existence. Didn't come into existence. Didn't begin to exist. It's always been here. At some point, you'll find something eternal is at the end of it, because if it wasn't eternal, something created it, created it, created it. You cannot have an infinite regression of causes. That's it's impossible. Philosophically, scientifically, it's impossible to have an infinite. More in philosophical realm, mathematical. You cannot have an infinite regression of causes. So that's the answer to who created God. As I say, this may be for our benefit more than the hard skeptics. That's the hard skeptic. Soft skeptic. This is probably the main person we're dealing with, the person that I want to deal with the most. He doesn't really believe that God created the universe, or he's 50-50. He's not really sure. Here's a question to ask them first up, just to see if they're open or not. If Christianity was true, would you become a Christian? So if it was true, would you become a Christian? The only answer to that question is yes, I would. If atheism were true, me, Simon, I would become an atheist. If Buddhism was true, I'd become a Buddhist. If paganism was true, if Nazism was true, then I would do it. Whatever's true, I do it. It's true. So they should say yes. If they don't, they're closed-minded to the truth. So, questions I would ask this soft skeptic, somebody who's really willing to engage in conversation and hasn't made their mind up. What do you believe? What do you mean by that? Whatever they say in response. What has led you to this conclusion? So why do you believe that now? What has led you to that conclusion? And then what evidence supports your position? Like, what led you to believe that? What evidence? Not an opinion. What evidence led you to that conclusion? And then chances are, I don't know, this is case by case, chances are they don't know the answers to that. They think something, they've got an opinion about it, but they don't know why they've got an opinion about it. Or if they do, they don't have the evidence to actually back up why for that opinion. So this is some of the questions I would ask. You're trying to draw them out. The burden of proof at this moment, if you've asked them and they say a statement like, I don't believe in that, or I don't think that's right, or I believe in something different, burden of proof is on them. Keep the burden of proof on them. Good question to then follow up with as well. Again, this is a soft skeptic, so they're probably a bit not certain, open. Have you considered the complexity of our known universe? Have you considered that the universe came about by a big bang? All time, space, and matter was created at that time. Do you realize that that can't create itself? What do you think is the most logical explanation? What things could possibly have caused that to happen? If you look up William Lane Craig stuff, it's either an unembodied mind or a number. Number can't create anything, so it's an unembodied mind. That's a much steeper study from William Lane Craig's reasonable faith stuff. So that's if the person then, the soft skeptic, is open and unsure, one of the things I'd say, well, if God created the world, if you're open to this idea, you think it's possible, what could this mean for you? So what could this mean for you if God created the world? Do you think that could have a meaning? Do you think it could? So you're trying to put thoughts in their head about the conclusion of the possibility that God has created the world. The other question you would ask, if they think that's possible, or they maybe do believe it's 75-25, or they just haven't given it a lot of thought before, you're going to say, well, if God created the world as it is, the universe, with beauty and power, could God have not tried to communicate with his created people? Given that God created us, do you not think it's possible that God could communicate with us? Okay, it's possible. You agree it's possible. Well, do you agree that he would have wanted to communicate with us? Has he communicated with us? And that might lead into other things. World religions, so many other beliefs out there. It will nearly always lead to something else. It's not going to stay where we are. Also, could God have been reaching out to his creation? And that might be a chance to look at Acts 17 verses 24 onwards, that the God who made the world does not live in temples built by hands, as if he needed anything, but God has been, though he's near each one of us, the saved will reach out for him and find him, though he's not far from each one of us. So that's the kind of things I want to lead them to. If they agree that it's possible that God created the world, or that it's more likely after you've had some discussion, well, you're leading them in different paths. Have you considered prophecy? That Jesus was prophesied before he came? If you consider the Old Testament. Now, again, this may lead to a range of other challenges, but you're taking them along the right path of, could God have designed the world? Could God be communicating with the world? Does God care about the world? Has God tried to reach out to his people? Is there an afterlife? Is there really purpose to life? Once you open up these boxes, then you're ready to deal with each of them individually. Again, you're not going to stay on this and be convinced based on this argument alone. Like I said the last time, it's a cumulative argument. So that's the soft skeptic, the person we're probably dealing with the most. The last person that I mentioned here was the seeker, someone who's seeking God already. We're not going to have to say much about this person. They're probably not going to need to essentially almost go backwards to think. They probably already believe and agree with the fact that God is behind the universe. But they may have a deistic view. They may believe God designed the world and then went off and left it. So then you can look at, well, look at the world. I mean, we'll get there next, the design of the world. But look at how it all happened. Look how powerful that was. Look how much God had a plan for all that he had made. You know, again, you may ask questions like, if God created the world, did it have purpose? Does it have any purpose? If it's God's power and purpose, like again, like the last guy, what does this mean for us? If God has this much power to do this, can he not control our lives? Again, with the seeker, it's going to depend what they need to move on to the next stage. But there's not much to say about this person. This is a good person to talk to. My main person to deal with here, I suppose, is dealing with the objections of the hard skeptic. Again, whatever God exists requires a cause. That's not true. Who created God? The main two objections. And then the next person, the main person probably is the soft seeker. Who's soft, I mean they're open to what you have to say and they're thinking through these issues. So I hope this is of help today. It'll all depend on whether we're having conversations or not with people like this. I know it's been hard over lockdown to get out, share our faith on the streets with our families. What I'd love to use this Patreon bit for, because at this point, there's only if some can get this. I pray with me for more patrons so more people can get this. But that we'd start to discuss the people we're reaching out to, that we'd like to reach out to. Prayers for people we'd like to reach out to. My mom and my brother joined in to my talk on Sunday. It was the first time my mom had joined in and listened to a talk that I give or a sermon that I preached in nearly 20 years. So that was significant. So please be praying for my mom. But again, it's great to do this today. Please drop me your thoughts and comments on this. If you had met other objections to the cosmological argument, if this stuff's all new and it's all like, well, what's all this stuff about? Again, we can simplify this stuff. And that's what I like to try and do. So please read the article I put up on that, just a little snippet so you can follow along there. But again, drop me any questions or thoughts you have. I'm going to be back again, hopefully starting next week with the next part of the faith. So it's going to be F. A is anthropic principle, fine-tuning argument, and then I'm going to be back with another bit about how to talk about the fine-tuning argument. Thanks for joining. Thanks for all your support, guys. Praying for us all out there. Be with you all again very soon. Amen.